My name is Dorothea Merrick. I'm 82 years old and I've been called many things in my life. Mother, widow, Sunday school teacher, volunteer, even the nicest neighbor on Maple Lane. But I never thought I'd be called a liar in a courtroom. The ceiling fans hummed lazily above us, but the air in the room was thick and heavy. The kind of heavy you feel when the truth is about to be buried under a mountain of lies. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands folded in my lap, my nursing assistant, Clara, sitting quietly beside me. Across the room she sat, Lillian Fawcett, my former caregiver. She looked fragile in her navy dress, her hair pulled back in a loose bun, a tissue balled in her trembling hand. She'd been telling the court about how close we'd been, how I was like a mother to her, how she loved me more than her own blood. And for anyone who didn't know the truth, her performance was perfect. Her voice broke at all the right moments. She dabbed at her eyes with the tissue, casting glances at the jury like she was pulling them into her grief. She painted herself as the devoted aide who'd been unfairly accused, wronged by the very woman she claimed to have cared for. She treated me like family, Lillian said, her voice catching. I stayed with her even when the hours were long. I never took advantage of her. Never. The judge, a man with tired eyes and a no-nonsense manner, leaned forward slightly, watching her. The jury was eating it up. I could feel the tide of the room leaning toward her story. Clara glanced at me, her lips pressed into a tight line. She knew what I knew, that every word spilling out of Lillian's mouth was poison wrapped in lace. I didn't move. I didn't interrupt. I didn't defend myself yet, because I knew what was coming. When Lillian's attorney finished his questions, the judge looked toward my side of the room. Mrs. Merrick, is there anything you'd like to present before we proceed to closing statements? I rose slowly, leaning on my cane, my joints aching from more than just age. Yes, Your Honor, I said, my voice steady. There's something I'd like the court to see. A video. From the corner of my eye, I saw Lillian's head snap toward me. A flicker, just a flicker, of panic broke through her carefully composed face. Clara reached into her tote and pulled out a small, labeled flash drive. This, I told the judge, was recorded in my home, by the woman sitting beside me. I nodded toward Clara. The bailiff took the drive, plugged it into the court's monitor system, and the screen at the front of the room lit up. The first frame appeared. The image was clear. Lillian's voice came next, sharper, colder than anyone in that room had ever heard it. And in that instant you could feel the shift. The truth was about to walk into that courtroom, bold and undeniable. If you're ready to hear what that video showed, and how one moment turned the entire case upside down, stick with me. Like this video, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss the next moment. The courtroom went still. The only sound was the faint hum of the speakers as the video began to play. It was my kitchen, the one I'd spent 40 years cooking Sunday roasts in. The camera was angled from the corner near the fridge, right above the little porcelain rooster clock. Clara had set it there weeks earlier after I'd confided in her that something didn't feel right. In the frame, Lillian was standing by my countertop, her back to me. Well, the me in the video. She had her phone wedged between her shoulder and her ear while she counted out cash from a small envelope. My envelope. Yes, I told her I paid the electric bill, she said into the phone, her voice dripping with amusement. She can't remember if she gave me the money or not, so I just told her she must have misplaced it. Poor thing's getting foggy upstairs. A couple of jurors leaned forward in their seats. One shook her head slowly. The video continued. Lillian hung up the phone and walked to the pantry. She took 2 boxes of my tea, slipped them into her tote, then reached up to the top shelf for the jar I kept emergency cash in. She counted the bills, smirked, and tucked them away. "Free room and board plus spending money," she muttered to herself. "This is easier than babysitting." Gasps rippled through the room. On screen, I walked into the kitchen, holding my cane, smiling faintly. "Lillian, have you seen my grocery list?" She turned, her face instantly transforming into something warm, almost maternal. "Of course, Mrs. Merrick," she cooed. "Let me help you look." The video ended there. I didn't look at the jury. I didn't need to. The air in that courtroom had shifted so sharply you could almost hear it. Lillian sat frozen in her chair, her mouth slightly open, her knuckles white as she gripped her tissue. The judge cleared his throat. "We'll take a short recess," he said. His voice was calm, but I saw the way his eyes lingered on me, like he was seeing me for the first time. Not as the frail old woman Lillian had painted, but as someone who had come prepared. As the bailiff called for the recess, my mind slipped back months, back to when Lillian first came into my home. It was a rainy Thursday when she arrived. My son Martin had insisted I needed extra help around the house. He meant well, but he worked long hours in another city, and after my hip surgery, he worried I'd have a fall. Lillian came recommended by a family friend. Kind, reliable, treats clients like family. She was in her 50s, with a ready smile and a voice that felt like honey and tea. She brought me flowers on her first day. She learned how I liked my coffee by the second. And she listened, really listened, when I told stories about my late husband or my garden. Or so I thought. First, she was exactly what I needed. She drove me to doctor's appointments, helped with groceries, even fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom. She laughed at my jokes and told me I reminded her of her own mother. But then came the first missing envelope. $50 gone from the cash I kept for church donations. I told myself I'd misplaced it. Then came the grocery receipts with totals that didn't match what was in my pantry. Again I made excuses, maybe prices had gone up. It wasn't until Clara came by one afternoon to drop off a casserole that things clicked. Clara, my part-time nursing assistant, had been with me on and off for years, filling in when I needed more help. She noticed right away that my pantry looked sparse. "Didn't you just go shopping?" she asked. When I told her Lillian had gone, Clara's brow furrowed. "Dorothea, I think you should keep an eye on things." I didn't want to believe it. I'd let Lillian into my home, into my routines. I told her things about my life I hadn't told anyone else in years. But I trusted Clara. That's when she offered to set up the camera. "Just to be sure," she said. "If nothing's going on, we'll delete it and forget the whole thing." 2 weeks later we had our answer. If you're ready to hear how I went from quiet suspicion to walking into that courtroom with proof strong enough to crush her lies, stay with me. Like this video, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe. When the recess was called and people started filing out of the courtroom, I didn't stand right away. My knees needed a moment, but more than that, my mind had slipped back to the months before all this. Back to when the betrayal was still taking shape, and I didn't yet know just how deep it ran. It started small, the way most poisons do. A missing receipt here, a bank statement that didn't add up there. But Lillian was always quick with a soft voice and a ready excuse. "Oh, you must have put that in the wrong folder, Mrs. Merrick." Or, "The store didn't have what you wanted, so I picked something else. You probably forgot we talked about it." And the awful thing was, she said it with such ease, such practiced kindness, that I began to doubt myself. Then, one afternoon, I overheard her in the living room talking on the phone. Her voice was low, but I could hear the smile in it. "Yes, I'm here with her now," she said. "It's getting worse, poor thing. She repeats herself all the time. She doesn't even notice when I tidy things away. Honestly, I don't think she should be living on her own anymore." My stomach dropped. I stepped into the room before I could stop myself. "Who are you talking to?" She pressed her hand to the phone. "Oh, just my sister. She works in elder care, you know. We were talking about how to keep you safe." That word rattled around in my head for days afterward. A week later, my son Martin came to visit. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks, baking his favorite oatmeal cookies, laying out the old photo albums he loved as a boy. But from the moment he walked in, I could tell something was different. He had that look on his face. The one people wear when they've already decided what's true. He sat across from me in the kitchen, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. "Mom," he began, "I've been talking to Lillian. She's worried about you." "Worried about me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "She says you've been forgetting things. That you've misplaced money. That you accused her of taking it, but then couldn't remember where you put it." He paused, watching my face like he was waiting for me to deny it and prove her point. "I never accused her," I said quietly. "But things have gone missing. Money. Food. I don't think it's my memory, Martin. I think—" "Mom." His voice sharpened, cutting me off. "Please. She's been here every day for months. She helps you with your bills, your groceries, your appointments. I trust her." And there it was, the shift. My son, my only child, trusting a woman who had been in my life for less than a year over the mother who raised him. I wanted to tell him about the way she watched me when she thought I wasn't looking. About the phone call I'd overheard. About the cash that disappeared from the jar in my pantry. But the words caught in my throat. Because the truth was, I was afraid he wouldn't believe me. From then on, visits with Martin felt strained. He asked me the same questions twice in different ways, like he was testing me. If I stumbled over a date or a detail, I could see it register in his mind as proof that Lillian was right. And Lillian. She leaned into it. She'd hover nearby when Martin was over, gently correcting me on little things. "Oh no, Mrs. Merrick, that was last Tuesday, remember?" Or, "No, you already told him that, dear." Every correction was like a chisel chipping away at the version of me my son had always known. Capable, clear-minded, and in control. The lowest point came one afternoon in late January. Martin and Lillian were both in the living room when Lillian pulled a folded brochure from her bag and handed it to him. "I know it's not my place," she said softly, "but I think it's time to start looking at assisted living. Just somewhere safe, where she'll have company and supervision." I felt the blood drain from my face. "I am not leaving my home," I said, my voice shaking. Martin held up a hand. "Mom, just hear her out." In that moment I realized what she was doing. She wasn't just stealing from me. She was dismantling my independence, piece by piece, until the day would come when no one would question why I'd been moved out of my own house, least of all my son. And that's when I knew I couldn't rely on anyone else to save me. When Clara came by the next week, I told her everything. Every missing dollar, every strange comment, every look from my son that felt like doubt instead of love. Clara didn't hesitate. "We're going to get proof," she said. "Not for me. Not even for you. For him, so he can't ignore it anymore." The camera went up the next day. 2 weeks later we had the footage. And now, months later, here we were in a courtroom. That proof playing out in front of strangers who didn't know either of us. Strangers who would decide which one of us to believe. But this time, for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid of being doubted. Because the truth was no longer just in my head. It was right there on that screen, and Lillian couldn't charm it away. If you want to see exactly how that truth shattered her in court, and the moment my son finally saw her for who she really was. Like this video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe so you don't miss the turning point of this story. The bailiff's voice called the room back to order, and people shuffled into their seats. The video still hung frozen on the big screen. Lillian's hand halfway into my pantry jar of cash, her smirk caught forever in a single frame. The judge adjusted his glasses and turned to Lillian's attorney. Would the defense like to address this evidence? Her attorney stood slowly, buttoning his jacket. "Your Honor, this footage may appear troubling, but we have reason to believe it's been taken out of context." My client. Out of context. The words slipped out of me before I could stop them. I leaned forward, my voice steady. She's stealing from me on camera. What more context do you need? The judge lifted a hand. Mrs. Merrick, you'll have your turn. But my eyes weren't on the judge. They were on Martin. My son was staring at the screen, his jaw tight, his hands gripping his knees. His gaze flicked from the image to Lillian and back again, and I could see the war raging in his mind. This was the woman he'd defended, the woman he'd trusted over his own mother, and here she was, exposed in front of everyone. Lillian shifted in her seat, her usual calm unraveling in small, telling ways. Her fingers twisted the tissue in her lap until it tore. Her eyes darted between the jury and Martin. When she spoke, her voice was thinner than before. I was holding the money for her, she said, looking directly at Martin. She gets confused, you know that. I was protecting her from misplacing it. A murmur swept through the courtroom. Martin didn't respond. He didn't move. The judge nodded toward the prosecutor. Would you like to question the witness further? Yes, Your Honor. The prosecutor stepped forward. Ms. Fawcett, you said you were holding the money for Mrs. Merrick. Can you explain why, in the same video, you told someone on the phone she wouldn't notice it was gone? Lillian's face went pale. I was joking. Just a private joke. Private jokes, the prosecutor said evenly, don't usually involve counting stolen cash, hiding groceries, and calling your employer easier than babysitting. Gasps again. My eyes stayed on Martin. His expression had shifted. Less shock now, more shame. He rubbed his hands over his face, like he was trying to scrub away the months of doubt he'd placed on me. The prosecutor pressed on. And can you explain this second clip? The screen flickered, showing another day in my kitchen. Lillian stood by the stove speaking to Martin, who had stopped by that afternoon. I wasn't in the room, but the camera caught her clearly. She's been leaving the stove on, she told him. I'm worried she's a danger to herself. You might want to start looking into assisted living before she burns the place down. Martin had nodded in the video. I remembered that day. I'd been in the garden. I never left the stove on. When the clip ended, the silence in the courtroom was a living thing. Ms. Fawcett, the prosecutor said quietly, were you trying to have Mrs. Merrick removed from her home? Lillian shook her head quickly. No, But Martin's voice cut through. Yes, you were. Every head turned toward him. He was looking at her now, really looking, and the disbelief was gone. In its place was something colder. You lied to me. You lied about her. You made me think my own mother was losing her mind. His voice shook. And I believed you. Lillian opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her face, for the first time since I'd met her, was stripped bare of charm. The judge cleared his throat. I believe we've heard enough from this witness. And just like that, the mask she'd worn so perfectly for months was gone. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. But I sat a little straighter in my chair. Because for the first time my son was looking at me and seeing the truth. Not the version Lillian had fed him, but me, his mother. And that was worth more than any verdict. The judge's gavel tapped once, sharp and final. We'll move to closing arguments. The prosecutor kept it short. You've seen the footage. You've heard the lies. This is not about confusion or care. It's about exploitation. Mrs. Merrick trusted Ms. Fawcett in her home, with her finances, with her well-being. That trust was violated. The law should respond accordingly. Lillian's attorney spoke longer, his voice dipping into sympathy and plausible deniability, but even as he spoke, I could see the jury's faces. No one was buying it anymore. The deliberations lasted less than 20 minutes. When the jury filed back in, the foreman's voice was steady. We find in favor of the plaintiff, Dorothea Merrick, and award full restitution of stolen funds, plus damages. There was a faint, almost collective exhale from the gallery. The judge nodded, entered it into the record, and that was that. But for me, the real verdict wasn't on paper. The real verdict was in Martin's eyes. He came to me after court, his face drawn. "Mom," he began, but I stopped him with a small shake of my head. "I don't need an apology," I said softly. "I just need you to remember who I am the next time someone tries to tell you otherwise." His eyes glistened. "I will." Lillian was still sitting at the defense table when I gathered my things. She didn't look at me, not directly, but I felt her gaze when I passed. Gone was the confidence, the careful poise. What was left was smaller, the kind of small you can't fix with charm. The door. I paused. I didn't say anything. I just looked back long enough for her to know one thing. I hadn't needed to shout, to slander, or to match her cruelty. The truth had been enough. Outside, the sun was warm on my face. Clara was waiting with my coat, her smile wide. "You did it," she said. "No," I replied, glancing toward Martin, who was holding the car door open for me. "We did it. And we did it the right way." As we drove home, the courthouse shrinking behind us, I thought about all the times I'd bitten my tongue over the years, all the times I'd chosen silence to keep the peace. This time I'd spoken, not with shouting but with proof, with patience, with a clear voice that couldn't be twisted. And in the end, that was the only way I wanted to win. Because sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's the sound of a room going quiet when the truth plays on a screen, and there's nowhere left to hide. If this story gave you chills, like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more gripping, emotional tales of resilience and truth.